Kia ora, good morning. So I'm going to go and make myself another coffee and then I'm going to do my podcast. I've been awake for a little while, but I've just sort of been trying to wake up and compose myself. I've been working on this case kind of lazily, tentatively for the last couple of days, and I just wanted to get it straight in my head before I made this podcast. I'm kind of, as you'll know from my connecting the dots, I'm kind of working on a lot of British cases and that, because I kind of feel like I'm wrapping things up here. This is my final hurrah for Great Britain before I leave, to be able to work on, the whole plan was, when I got justice, we were going to go around the UK and I was going to work on some famous cases and that, because there's some that have just fascinated me for decades. And there's some like Wollaton Bridge, dog suicide bridge, and that I just feel like I have a moral responsibility to go and do a show on, to explain to people what the truth about what is actually going on there, and then hopefully I'll be able to fix it. Before we leave, I wanted to be able to say a final goodbye to Great Britain by doing a tour of it and making my shows and going out and recording my shows and showing you how I do everything and explaining everything in person, in places that like with Overton Bridge, it would really help being on camera to show you physically, to be able to point out and show you visually. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a whole pile of shows before we left, so that when I left, all these unanswered questions that Britain's had for decades, they'll have the answers there finally. And it's kind of like my gift to Great Britain. That's how it feels anyway. So, so I'm working on a few British unexplained mysteries, unsolved mysteries, paranormal, supernatural cases and that, as a gift to Great Britain, so that they know how to deal with it, so they know what to do. And then God willing, when I get the Alchemist Cavern up and running in probably America, if I get rid of Trump, I'm pretty sure America might be okay with giving me a visa. Because I'll be helping them sort out the illegal immigration crisis, because that will be, nobody will be living in Alcatraz anymore. They'll be, all of that's going to be sorted. The Malcolm Jamal Warner thing, hopefully I've earned America's trust. I don't know what direction God's got me going in right now, but let's see where this goes, because he's got me focused on America now. I think because everything in Russia's starting to wrap up, and Vladdy can go off and live in peace finally, and Russia and Ukraine can heal and that. So now I think maybe I've got to focus on America and helping steady America, steady the ship, so to speak, because once Trump and his administration and all the Dems and that, they were in on this kind of Epstein conspiracy thing together, they're all going to be thrown overboard. And, I think maybe I'm being sent there to help steady the ship. Maybe help bring America into the new world paradigm. The new world in order, once we get rid of the new world order. We help put the world in order, put everything in place, put everything in balance. With Russia leading the charge, because they earned it. They made the biggest sacrifice for world peace, and so they earned to be the kingdom. They earned the title of, the kingdom of the new Holy Land. So then I think maybe I'm being focused on helping America now, that everything is wrapping up in Russia, and then Europe and all that as well, because obviously I want to take my shows around the world. I want to be able to do this globally, do my shows, both radio and TV. So for now, I'm just focusing on Great Britain, and even, regionally, like my neighbourhood, Yorkshire, and Newcastle upon Tyne, and fairly local, Liverpool. They're all Manchester and all that. That's all kind of like my neck of the woods, because I'm in West Yorkshire, and that's all kind of my neck of the woods. And I lived in Liverpool for a couple of years, and Derbyshire, and I've been all over the place. So, but yeah, at the moment I'm just currently dealing on cases that are sort of fairly local or around my neck of the woods. So today we are going to be talking about the cases from the 60s, and that where the kids were reporting seeing gnomes and leprechauns. I'll put a link in the description box below of the videos that I'm talking about so that you can watch them. This isn't going to be a huge long video because it's fairly simple. We've already kind of briefly touched on why they do these things, but just let me go and make a coffee and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got the kettle on. If you go to my Instagram and my X and that, you'll see in the past I've already done Fountains Abbey. My sons and I did a cleansing ritual there. It was actually like it was just, I hadn't been allowed to do it for many, many, many years, but crossed the veil. But I document the whole experience on my YouTube with the jackdaws, and on Instagram on YouTube I talk about finally being allowed to cross the veil, to cleanse Fountains Abbey. I was left at the gate, so to speak, because I hadn't ascended enough to be able to take on such a monumental task of doing a cleansing ritual at Fountains Abbey because of the stuff that went on there. And so that's documented on YouTube and Instagram and X and that. Found my Fountains Abbey case. And then, of course, there's all my National Trust ones that are showing you how I use quantum magnetics and all of that. While I was training, I was doing these little investigations, all my National Trust videos, and that is me testing quantum magnetics to see if it worked, to see if it was genuine or all in my head, because the paranormal was in your head, so I wanted to know what I was dealing with. But of course now then, when I got locked up and I got given the Bible, and I started to see that that God knew that quantum magnetics was a real thing because it's in the Bible. I mean, the Virgin Mary was a time jumper. She's the one who was recorded to do the first bilocation. You've been in two places at once, and that's time jumping. And I can do multi-locations as well. They're a thing in the Bible too. So then of course there's my connecting the dots in that. So I'm trying to teach people to remember their roots, I guess. And because I'm in Britain, it's the British have forgotten who they are because they've been so caught up in all this COVID messed up government since COVID, or since Blair, kind of nonsense, and that they've been dealing with so much nonsense for so many decades in politics, and that they've had their identity stripped, and who they are and the fundamental core of them are people like Boudica, strong, warriors like Norman and Viking and Celt and Pict and whatever warriors who were once deeply rooted into the core of Great Britain, where they remembered all of this stuff, but without the superstitions. Because one of the things that I do is I kind of clear up superstitions. Because we're dealing with a lot of ancient nations with what I do, that deal with folklore and mythology and superstitions, and they made silly mistakes like human sacrifices and animal sacrifices, thinking it was going to appease the gods and please the gods, and that curses the land. And so any stuff that goes wrong in a country, like everything that's happening in Great Britain now, is Great Britain has been forced to pay off karmic debt for all the innocent people who were sacrificed in the building of an empire. Which is why King Charles is also been like, it's like Great Britain and King Charles are going through their karma together, because it's a holy war, you see. So now he's starting to stand up to fight for his people of Great Britain. So he's protecting England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales, which is incredibly brave to do, because he's up against people like Donald Trump and like the EU and that, and it's incredibly brave, and he's starting to defend his people. So it's like Starmer had to come along to tip Britain over the edge, to force King Charles to take his position, to stand, to defend his people, and in turn, the people will remember who they are, fight for their sovereignty, fight for their national identity, fight for their ancestry. And that's by them digging in their heels and all fighting together, they're remembering who they are. And then that's when the ancestors, in Māori terms, I've got goosebumps, that's when the ancestors will rise up and give them that warrior strength to say to people like Donald Trump and Keir Starmer and the Jeffrey Epstein list and the EU people and all of that, they're all on the Epstein list, they're all the same crowd. You're not doing this to us. No more. You're not, no. We're British. And, you know, we've forged this allegiance through blood, sweat and tears. We're the ones that chipped away at these rocks. We're the ones that built the original roads. This is ours. And that's when the holy war starts to be won. But the only way you can dig into your roots and draw on the power and the strength of your ancestry, and for the descendants that came before us, is by getting our folklores and mythologies right, and knowing when to use them for courage and strength and hope and faith, and when to realise that some of these things were used to oppress us in order to keep us down, in order to keep us silent. When you can differentiate between the two, that's when healing begins, and then that's when everything that comes up out of the ground, you know, like with how Māori people do the haka, you know, when we stamp our feet on the ground and smack our thighs, that's to wake our ancestors up, because they're asleep in their graves and that, they're asleep in the soil. So we stomp the ground to wake them up. This is what's happening in Great Britain. This is what's starting to happen. And in order to put you back on the even keel, I'm going to help Great Britain release a lot of ancestral karma through the blood, sweat and tears that's been soaked in the soil, right through to their spiritual healing. And and I do that by helping clear up physical locations with my products and stuff. Like, I would really love to go back to do the Moors murders. I put down some stuff where those murders took place, but it wasn't in the right spot completely. And I would love to go back and do my thing with the Moors murders, which is, it's just I can't drive, otherwise I would have been doing all these shows myself. As soon as I was able to, if I had a car and I could drive, I'd be doing it all. I would have done these shows years ago by myself. I would have just gone out and done them. I'd love to do the Yorkshire Ripper as well. I'd love to deal with that. I'd love to go to places where these events happened and be able to see what I could see, but also cleanse the areas, like I did with the stabbings at the back of my ex's house, which is also on my Instagram. I recorded it all there. And you'll see some of the salts and products in that I was working with, because I got permission from the police after forensics came to do their examination. I got permission from the forensic police and that to cleanse the area, because they were African boys. The victims were African boys. And in my culture, you don't wash blood away. When there's been a crime in that, you don't wash the blood away. You have to cleanse it and give it back to the planet. So they shed blood on foreign soil. So it, from an Indigenous point of view, it needed to be taken care of, and I got permission from the forensics department to do what I had to do to clean it all up, and it worked brilliantly, because until I did that, the birds stopped singing. Between the time the boys got stabbed until the time that I did the cleansing, which was about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, the birds stopped singing, and they stopped coming down to, feed at the feeders and stuff. And then once I did the cleansing, everything was fine again. I'll put a link in the description box below of a place that I wanted to do in Lancashire, and it's a church kind of like graveyard or cemetery, because it's a cemetery if a church is attached, and a graveyard if there's no church. So no, it's a graveyard if the church is attached, and a cemetery if there's not. So this is a graveyard with a church attached, where there's been reported to be a whole pile of paranormal activity, where it's been known that they've done, devil worshippers have done sacrifices there. So I'd really love to go there too, as well as Overton Bridge, as well as there's so many places that I'd love to do. So I'll put a link in, but you'll see what I'm talking about. I can help Great Britain my way before I leave. And if I can help them understand a lot of the stuff that's been going on for the last few decades in regards to the paranormal and the supernatural and alien encounters and seeing gnomes and leprechauns and that sort of thing, then once they understand what's going on, it removes that identity on the soil. It removes it. It stops it from occurring. It no longer perpetuates the myth that this place is paranormal, because people understand it for what it actually is. And I come along and I'll point out which is which and how is how and why is why. And, you don't have to believe anything I'm saying, but I know that it works, because this is my entire life's work. I've been studying the paranormal since I was like 3-4 years old, watching my sister, listening to my dad's stories, watching my sisters plural, listening to my dad's stories, listening to my aunties and uncles' personal experiences, that sort of thing. So I'm able to categorize every event and explain every event in a way that finally clears up any misunderstandings, any falsehoods, any fallacies, any fraud, and it just leaves you with the raw facts. So I basically come along, I categorize every event, put it into a little file and say, this is what it is, have a read. So the kettle's boiled a few minutes ago, so let me go and get my coffee, and I'll be back in a minute, and we shall talk about the gnomes and leprechauns. Okay, so I did a write-up about the Enfield ghost as well. So anyway, there's so many places that I want to go to in Great Britain before I leave. It's not funny. I hope I get the opportunity, but that's all going to be up to God. Anyway, remember I was saying with the Stockbridge bypass ghost and all of that, and Malcolm Jamal Warner's death, and that when it's anything dealing with the occult, and that they know what gods to use, they know what triggers to use. Like they'll use Native American mythology and that, like the Wendigo and the Skinwalker and all of that, in order to instill fear in people, to keep them away from places they don't want people looking at or looking into or anything like that. Now, they use Mama Wata, I think, with people like Malcolm Jamal Warner and Whitney Houston, for, as sacrifices and that sort of thing. But then you also get, when it comes to the government and military and things that they're doing behind the scenes, they'll also use, local myths and legends and gods and that sort of thing. So, like, in regards to the story that's in this video that I was watching, in Liverpool, the reason why they perpetuated the myth of leprechaun is because there is a high population of Irish people in Liverpool. It's right across the way from Ireland. There's a ferry that goes there. It's the neighbours. Like on a clear day, you can see Ireland from some parts of Liverpool. And so they used the myth of the leprechaun. They perpetuated the myth of the leprechaun in the 60s, and that to keep people away from what they didn't want people to be looking at. And what I discovered in the stories with the gnomes in Tyne, and the Tyne, and like in Bedfordshire and all of that, you can tell when it's a difference between the government and the military. Like when it's the government maybe wanting to keep you out of the mines and things because they're mining stuff for, their weapons and all of that, like the energy weapons and all of that. That's what we're definitely dealing with in the case of the Bedfordshire and Tyne gnomes. And the reason why you can tell is because of the fact that there's military bases close by, and there's, in this case, it was sandstone mines that were close to where these kids were reporting seeing things. It's when it's to do with things like energy weapons, when it's the government and that, they will, sorry, when it is to do with like energy weapons, that's when they will bring the people out in the little costumes and suits, and I think in the case with the gnomes in the Tyne, there was a park, a nature reserve right where it was happening, where the kids used to go and play. You'll always find that trees and forests and stuff will be involved because it's great camouflage. They can hide there, but also as well, the kids described, in the original case that got me onto this one, the kids described seeing the gnomes with bobble cars and that, which the first thing I thought was like they were feeding the kids the idea of, noddy. That's what I was thinking with the pointy hats, and that they were playing on the whole noddy theme. But even in the 60s and that, the British were still very superstitious, because, you still had, like I said, your immigrants from Ireland and your Vikings and your Germanics and all that, were still very steeped in those days, in what you would call witchcraft and superstition, but it wasn't witchcraft. It was just wives' tales, like traditions being passed down from generation to generation through the wisdoms of the matriarch. Like you get a flu, you put onions on your feet, go to bed with onions on your feet, and then you wake up and the flu's gone. That would be considered witchcraft, but it's not. It's just earth wisdom, elemental wisdom. These cunning men and women and that knew how to use the wisdom of the healing cycles of earth in order to cure humans of illness and that, because they knew that whatever illness man gets on the planet, God has provided the medicine on the planet, and they knew what to do with it all. And so all these wives' tales that get handed down, like, having lemon and honey when you have a cold, that would be considered witchcraft. Putting lemons and honey together is like putting an elixir together, like witch's brew. Chicken soup, everyone knows chicken noodle soup cures colds and stuff like that. That would be considered witchcraft. This is all stuff that was formed in cauldrons and pots and things like that centuries ago that would have been considered witchcraft. But now we do every day because it was handed down from generation to generation. And when it comes to the government or the military wanting to get away with stuff, they will absolutely draw on local laws and myths and legends and that in order to keep you away from specific areas. Now, with the government, when it's things like mines and stuff, it's always going to be for their weapons. And in this case, we're talking about sandstone with Bedfordshire and Tyne. It was sandstone, grindstone, as they call it. And remember Nikola Tesla. Now, this is the interesting thing. In the cases where they talked about seeing the glowing lights in the forest and the green alien things and blah, blah, blah. One thing you have to remember when it comes to seeing lights in the sky and, alien encounters and that, governments have had access to drones since 1898 because it was a Nikola Tesla invention. He invented the drone. Basically the unmanned drone. That was like his thing, that he invented the drone. And then it was used in the 1930s. And then it was used again in the 1950s. As, the more it was used, the more sophisticated it became. And by the time they were using remote control drones in that in the 1950s, they were absolutely disguising them as UFOs and that, because they were Project Bluebeam and that. They want to put it in people's heads that aliens are real, that, that they fly around. Now in Bedfordshire they had the Air Force Base and the Naval Base there. And in Tyne and that they've got, what was it, Air Force and Navy as well, I think. I think there's Army there. I'll put links in the description box below because I was doing the investigation into it. And also proof about the drones. The green suits with the no faces and that. Every time there's like they're in suits with no faces and that. I mean, the military have had morph suits, camouflage morph suits and that they've been working on since the 50s. And I proved that with the Skinwalker investigation. So what you're basically looking at is they got these kids to cause a hysteria in order to divert attention away from the fact that they were testing drones out in the area. Same with PC Godfrey and that, testing drones, testing weaponry, and letting people think that it was aliens and, leprechauns and goblins and all that, because it's better to have people distracted on that than the truth of the matter of the fact that they, that they have had drone technology for a long time, and they've been using it to let people think it was aliens and UFOs. And in Yorkshire, that is a very big deal. Yorkshire has been littered with stories for decades about UFOs. And like I said, they've had this technology since 1898 because of Tesla. Um, so I think, like when you're dealing with anything to do with the military, it's going to involve UFOs and aliens and men in suits and that. Now the thing is, um, one of them had like a special belt with a black box in it, and when the kids got too close, he like yellow smoke appeared, and then he vanished, and when the smoke cleared and everything, he was in a different position. Clearly that's a human. Clearly they were like, okay, we need to put on this show, but to stop the kids from getting too close, we need to smoke and mirrors to cause a distraction, which is classic magician. Like in a magic shop, the poof of smoke, poof, and he's gone. And that's what they were doing, knowing as well that kids would get it wrong. Kids would get stuff wrong. There'd be things in it that kids would either get wrong, or that kids would be so brutally honest and tell the truth that it would seem like it was far-fetched and wrong. But you usually find when there's more than like a few kids, some of the details will be wrong. And what they said was, when the teacher, when the kids were asked to recount their stories, none of them deviated from the facts, but some of them got bits wrong, which you can expect for children, because these were children. And how do you get children to explain like goblins and gnomes and leprechauns and bubble cars and all that sort of thing? So they specifically did it knowing that the people would think children's imaginations, oh, it's just kids' imaginations, and if people did happen to believe them, that that there would be enough in there that would make it sound phantasmagorical, that everybody would then spend the rest of their lives focusing on this paranormal event or this UFO event or this supernatural event or whatever people are saying they think it is, to divert their attention away from the fact that they were using the forests and the local areas and that to test out their drones. And then wherever there's mines involved, you're looking at, especially like sandstone and limestone, that's when you're looking at energy weapons. And and don't forget, they have these energy weapons on naval ships and that. Now they just point it in the right direction and fire it. All the stuff is there on my X and there. I've done all these investigations. Everybody knows this technology exists now, but back in those days, they were still needing to test them out. And so they test them on the public to see what they, can get away with, to see if it works. Because don't forget, they want to use a lot of these weapons and that to fire at people to cause what happened in places like Southport, or to drive Israeli soldiers nuts so that they do things that when they come out of it, they're so devastated by the realization of it, they end up killing themselves. And that's happening. I couldn't look into it because it makes me cry too much, because it hurts my heart for them, because it's something that I've been dealing with for a while. I'd been told about it a long time ago, that Israeli soldiers were being injected with things that were making them turn into blind rage. And when they'd come out of it a couple of days later, they were told they were vitamins, I believe, booster shots or something. And when they're coming out of it a couple of days later and seeing what they'd done, seeing what they'd been involved in, and yeah, they were killing themselves. And it's happening again. So, these things have to be taken seriously, because they mess with the Schumann resonance, and they mess with, they're using normal, average, everyday people as test subjects for their great plan to get rid of the undesirables, like what Bill Gates calls the Africans, the undesirables. keep you distracted while they test the things they need to test. And then when they're ready to test them, like with what happened in Southport and that, then, they get to put everything into position to get rid of the monarchy, take over the government, take over the country, take over the people, take over the world, blah, blah, blah. So, and that's why I had that dream with Nikola Tesla when he said he didn't know what it was he was building. It wasn't designed to hurt people. So, once you know what it is, even if you go to these specific areas and there's reports of people like feeling pressure on their chests, pressure in their brain, like, where their brains are going vomp, 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 where their heart starts pounding. If they go to any of these places where these myths and legends and paranormal occurrences and that took place, and they feel those physical effects of the heaviness, feeling weighed down, feeling like you're having like gravity issues, where you might have trouble moving because you feel so heavy, and in your head it might be going woo, 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 and those reports were heard by people, by the way. That woo, 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 woo sound was heard by people. That's when you know you're dealing with energy weapons and mind control and mind diversion tactics, when they're trying to get your focus in your mind and that away from what they don't want you looking at. And it's always to do with weapons testing or having access to the mines in the local area, where they have resources in them that they want to use for their machines and weapons. So I'll put links in the description box below. You'll see the Fountains Abbey investigation on my Instagram. I'll put the one from the church in Lancashire I want to do. I really, 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 really desperately want to do Pendle Hill as well. My ex had been promising me for years to take me to Pendle Hill and Overton Bridge, and just when we were about to do Overton Bridge, we had the first lockdown. And then with Pendle Hill, he did take me to Pendle Hill, but he didn't take me to where I wanted to go. He took me to where he wanted to go, knowing that I wouldn't be able to climb that hill where the religion of, the Quaker religion was invented, and that because of my hernias and my scars and that it pulls. I can walk flat, but I can't walk going up things. Pulls on my scars, and this was before the torture as well. So yeah, I like climbing mountains and huge hills and things like that. I can't do, especially not now. But I would desperately love to do Lancashire Castle. I would love to go to the crossroads where they used to execute the people. I would love to do the whole Pendle Hill walk and go to the graveyard and everything. I'd love to do my bit for them, for those poor Pennine witches. I'd love to do a whole show about it before I leave, and Yorkshire Ripper and the Moors murders, and I'd love to do like a whole show before I leave, if God will let me. If not, I can still turn them into podcasts and stuff. But it's just kind of my way of giving Britain a leg up to help them fight the darkness that they are now facing with the government who was sent by Satan basically to do the work of God. Because remember, Satan uses the devil to do God's work. And we had to know where the devils were hiding. And now we know. So now we can work together. But I want to be able to make sure that when I leave Great Britain, it's because the King took his place and took control for the people and protected the people and got rid of the people who were causing all this damage. And then in all of that new beginning, they'll then have a clean slate on the earth, because I will be able to go around and clean up the ancestral stuff for them, so that the karmic debt that the king and the people of Great Britain have paid off together, you know, through how they all treated each other, trying to create civilizations here in Great Britain over the centuries and centuries and centuries. They're all being forced to pay it off together, which is beautiful. Like Richmond Castle, my investigation into Richmond Castle, paying it off together, which is beautiful, because then it means that the ghosts of the past will be put to rest, and it means that there will be peace that will spread over Great Britain as it's all lifted, as it all rises, as the spirits and the souls of the innocent who were slaughtered in the name of British civilization and British Empire, you're all working together to pay it off, and I'm going to help you lift it so that all these souls can rise and cross over and rest in peace, which will bring peace to Great Britain. All the leaders will be in sync. God will be the focus again. History and culture and civilization will be the focus again. Nature and Great Britain, the earth of Great Britain, the core of Great Britain, will be the focus again. And the hell ride that you've just come out of since Blair will finally be over. And then you'll understand all the lies that you've been told about various paranormal things, all the fallacies, all the misunderstandings. It'll all be gone. It'll all be cleared and all be gone. It'll all be cleared up. So it's like being cured of the chicken pox, or being cured of smallpox, or all those little spots will be gone. Clear skin, strong immune system. That's what I'm trying to leave behind for Great Britain and the people of Great Britain. Just, you know, as my way of saying thank you for some of them having my back, like for the taxpayer. I have this need in me to want to pay the taxpayer back for helping me out while I was healing my body to recover from the abuse and torture, so that I could balance myself and refocus and, you know, gain my strength and steady myself on my feet. For all the people in Wakefield and Yorkshire who came to my aid with all the stuff that they furnished my home with. I need to do something. And I really, really want to. I decided the other day I want to have British writers and all of that. I want to, you know, my animated series, The Art of Creation, I want to make that here in Great Britain. I think that nobody will get the humour and the writing of that right better than British comedy writers. So then I'd be employing people and paying taxes in Great Britain, and I can give back that way. Any way I can give back, to say thank you for the 3.5 years that the taxpayers had my back, whether it's because I was locked up or not. The taxpayers still paid for it. They paid for my whole ride through hell, but helped me come out the other side, especially with my neighbours being so protective of me, which is why I'm so protective of them in regards to the neighbour that's going around bullying all the men and scaring all the old people. I have this brain that needs to make things right, and I'm not one of these people. I don't do debt. So if I feel like I owe you, my conscience won't be clear until I've paid the debt off. So I don't do debt. I don't borrow money from people. And me having these benefits that I was put on when I got locked up, when they were going to let me go and put me in the shelter and stuff like that. They had to, they had to sign me up to have money until I could get back on my feet, because I had to figure out how I was going to be independent now with this new injury, my stomach, with this new disability, because it can be debilitating if I don't have pain relief and I have to carry and go up and down stairs and things like that. So to me, it's a debt. I feel like I owe the British taxpayer money, and I will be paying it back. I don't do debt, and taking this money every month to just get by, I am grateful for every single penny, for every single thing that has been put in this flat that wasn't anything I could rescue from the dungeon of doom. That's what I call my ex's house. I am so grateful for every single bit of it, which is why when I leave, I'm giving it all away. I've already got people in line like saying, oh, I'll have this and I'll have that. And I'll be paying the money back by employing writers and animators and voice actors, and I'll be paying taxes here and that. So not only will I be paying the money back in taxes, but I will be giving back in jobs as well. It's just I don't need to physically be here in order for any of that to happen, because the one thing that COVID taught us is that you can absolutely be an artist and a writer and a this and a that via Zoom. So if I end up in like South Dakota or whatever, I can have meetings and that with my British writers and all of that here via the computer. So yeah, I just think that nobody would be able to handle that animated series better than the British, and they've never had a British animated comedy series that's like South Park and Family Guy and all of that. So yeah, anyway, so I'll put links in the description box below. I'll put the video that I've been watching in the description box below, and all the rest you can find on Instagram and X. But that's pretty much what it is. That's what you're dealing with. It's either government or military, and you can usually tell by if it's military, it's going to be because they're testing like crafts, and in this case I think they were testing drones. And even now to this day, remember back in the day, 2023 was it? 2024 2024, when they're still flying drones over the area, because my son mentioned it and I documented it on X, because it was not long after my son saw the drones that Moscow got bombed by those drones. And so when they were testing those things in the 60s and 70s, of course they needed diversion tactics, so bring out the gnomes and goblins and pixies and aliens and leprechauns. So there you go. So I'm going to go and have my breakfast now. I shall speak to you later. Have a beautiful day. Hold your head up high and know you are loved. Ka kite anō.